The Emperor is our father and our guardian, but we must also guard the Emperor.
The Adepta Sororitas, colloquially called the Sisterhood, whose military arm is also known as the Sisters of Battle and formerly as the Daughters of the Emperor, are an all-female division of the Imperium of Man's State Church known as the Ecclesiarchy, or more formally as the Adeptus Ministorum. The Sisterhood's orders militant serve as the Ecclesiarchy's armed forces, mercilessly rooting out spiritual corruption and heresy within humanity and every organization of the Adeptus Terra. There is naturally some overlap between the duties of the Sisterhood and the Imperial Inquisition. For this reason, although the Inquisition and the Sisterhood remain entirely separate organizations, the orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas also act as the chamber militant of the Inquisition's Ordo Hereticus. The Adepta Sororitas and the Sisters of Battle are commonly regarded as the same organization, but the latter title technically refers only to the orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas, the best-known part of the organization to the imperial public. The Sisterhood serves as the Ministorum's only official military force because the decree passive laid down by the reformist Ecclesiarch Sebastian Thor held that in the wake of the Age of Apostasy's reign of blood in the 36th millennium, the Ecclesiarchy cannot maintain any men under arms. This command was supposed to limit the power of the Ecclesiarchy by preventing it from maintaining the massive armies of the faithful Frateris Templar it once used to abuse its power from the 32nd to the 36th millennia. However, the Adeptus Ministorum has been able to circumvent this decree with the subtle acquiescence of the Inquisition by deploying the all-female military force of the Sisterhood's orders militant. The Adepta Sororitas, also known as the Sisters of Battle, are an elite sisterhood of warriors raised from infancy to adore and worship the Emperor of mankind. Their fanatical devotion and unwavering spiritual purity is a bulwark against corruption, heresy, and alien attack, and once battle has been joined, they will stop at nothing until their enemies are utterly crushed. Battle Sisters will stride through fire if need be, their bolters spitting staccato bursts of destruction every step of the way. Not even death can stay the wrath of the Adepta Sororitas. Indeed, the blood of martyrs only strengthens the resolve of Battle Sisters, spurring them to greater acts of heroism in the name of the honored fallen. The Adeptus Ministorum, or the Ecclesiarchy as it is generally known in the Imperium, is a monolithic state church founded on the worship of the God Emperor as the savior of mankind and the preaching of the imperial creed throughout the whole galaxy. The Sisters of Battle are the army of the Ecclesiarchy. Clad in ceramite power armor, they carry an awesome array of weaponry with which to vanquish their enemies. The incredible wealth of the Ecclesiarchy ensures that they are equipped with the best wargear the Imperium has to offer. The Sisters of Battle are trained to the peak of human ability and stand amongst mankind's most dedicated and disciplined warriors. Wherever there are foes of the Emperor, the Sisters of Battle will be found fighting with faith and steel. When not actively prosecuting the Ecclesiarchy's wars, the Battle Sisters of the Orders Militant divide their time between rigorous training and devout worship of the God Emperor. Indeed, to the Adepta Sororitas, the disciplines are nigh inseparable, for whilst combat drills and studies of battle tactics can hone the body and the mind, only penitent prayer can bolster the spirit, and all three are required to defeat the Imperium's foes. The combination of combat doctrine and prayer is most evident on the battlefield, where Battle Sisters loudly proclaim their faith in hymn and verse as they march to war, calling upon the Emperor to aid them in the fight against their enemies. The intense, unquestioning nature of this faith is a potent weapon indeed, manifesting as divine inspiration that drives the Sororitas to unprecedented feats of martial prowess. Sisters of Battle, gripped with holy fervor, banish worldly fears from their minds, shrug off mortal wounds, and summon preternatural strength to smite their foes. The Sisters of Battle believe their faith to be a weapon stronger than any steel, and those who witness their battlefield miracles are left in no doubt that the spirit of the Emperor indeed walks with these pious warriors. Once battle has been joined, The Adepta Sororitas will stop at nothing until their enemies are utterly crushed.
Blackest of ages, saddest of times, let none give name to he that laid us low.
The Adepta Sororitas date their founding from the 36th millennium during the turbulent times known as the Age of Apostasy. During this age, the Ecclesiarchy held nigh total power, which it used to ensure that every single subject of the Emperor and the Imperium paid their dues, both spiritually and financially, to the duly appointed officers of the faith. In time, the Ministorum exercised such power that it began to dictate the policies of the ruling Senatorum Imperialis of the High Lords of Terra. The Ecclesiarch came to be viewed as speaking with the authority of the Emperor himself, and he influenced every aspect of the governance of the Imperium. Perhaps it was inevitable that the other great bureaucracies of the Imperium should grow resentful of the Ministorum. The Adeptus Administratum in particular found its own powers greatly curtailed, for the Ministorum's tithes took precedence over its own raising of funds and resources, leaving little in the coffers to pay for the running of the secular components of the Imperium. The Administratum's political influence soon waned so far that the Ministorum was able to dictate policy in secular matters as well. The raising and deployment of armies, the prosecution of wars, the commitment of significant imperial resources, and the appointment of sector lords all fell under the effective control of the Ministorum. In time, other institutions began to distrust the Ministorum's power, and the Adeptus Astartes and the Adeptus Mechanicus in particular became increasingly estranged from the Ministorum-dominated imperial government. As if the situation could not get any worse, the entire Imperium was soon plunged into even deeper despair. The incidence of warp storms, a phenomenon that cuts off vast swaths of the Imperium's space from interstellar travel and communication, increased by an order of magnitude. The warp began to seethe with roiling energies which bled forth into real space, making travel between anything other than worlds in the same planetary system increasingly perilous. Central governance of worlds limited to periodic contact at the best of times entirely collapsed. Where the black ships of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica were unable to get through, entire populations fell to demonic incursion or enslaver domination. Civil war and anarchy beset the Imperium, with those planets that remained accessible being ruthlessly suppressed by the increasingly brutal Fraterus Templars. Seeing that their foes were tearing themselves apart, the myriad enemies of humanity struck. The traitor legions sallied forth from the Eye of Terror, using their own blasphemous sorceries to strike planets otherwise cut off from outside aid. Orcs traversed the warp in their ramshackle space hulks, uncaring where the tides of the Empyrean regurgitated them and wreaking havoc in regions previously beyond their reach. The Drukhari used their webway to freely navigate the galaxy and struck wherever they desired, dragging millions of captives screaming to their infernal realm of Comora to suffer tortures and degradations beyond a sane man's imagination. The entire Imperium was gripped by an apocalyptic frenzy of doom and anarchy. Countless new sects sprung into being, many proclaiming that the God Emperor was enacting his final judgment upon mankind and that the end times were at hand. No world was untouched by the anarchy, as whole populations rose up in increasingly bizarre and extravagant acts of penance and self-flagellation. Anyone who dared attempt to reason with such doomsayers were declared heretics, and world after world tore themselves apart in an orgy of bloodletting and violent penance. Onto this doom-laden stage stepped the insane Goga Vandire, the 361st Master of the Administratum, a position he had attained by the ruthless application of bribes, threats, and outright assassination. A strident opponent of the Ministorum, Vandire had plotted against it for many standard years. Shortly before his ascension to the rank of High Lord, Vandire brought about the selection of a man of his own, choosing to head the Ecclesiarchy, ensuring that none could stand before his subsequent rise. As confidence in the new puppet Ecclesiarch, Paulus III, plummeted due to his reputation for incompetence and venality, Goga Vandire made his move, taking control of the Ecclesiarchy in a military coup d'etat orchestrated by Astra Militarum officers under his control who simply executed Paulus III outright, claiming that his behavior proved that he was a heretic and made him unfit for his office. Vandire then used the support of various ministorum cardinals he had bribed and otherwise brought under his influence to immediately call a conclave that selected him as the new Ecclesiarch. Assuming the dual roles of Ecclesiarch and Master of the Administratum to become the most powerful person in the Imperium of Man, Vandire succeeded ultimately only in driving the Imperium into the bitterest period of civil war and rebellion it had known since the Horus Heresy, remembered as the Reign of Blood. Early in his tyrannical rule, Vandire's agent sent him word of a unique sisterhood of warrior women living on the little-known agri-world of San'Lior. Hearing of their ascetic way of life, their utter dedication to the Emperor, and in particular their skills at arms, Vandire decided that he would make a formal visit to the secluded convent of the Daughters of the Emperor. The first that the inhabitants of San'Lior knew about the state visit by the man who was the de facto lord of the Imperium was when several thousand of his retainers marched into their simple towns and demanded that they show the High Lord the utmost devotion on pain of death. Images of these vast processions were recorded by the spy lenses of hundreds of servo skulls and disseminated across every world in the Imperium not cut off by the raging warp storms. The image of the High Lord Vandire being welcomed to San'Lior became a staple of Ecclesiarchy propaganda. When at last the vast cavalcade reached the gates of the convent in which the Daughters of the Emperor resided, Vandire found them barred and closed. The voice of the gatekeeper informed the High Lord that the Daughters of the Emperor recognized only the authority of the God Emperor himself and would open their gates to no man. Vandire's attendants cringed in anticipation of an explosion of rage, yet uncharacteristically, the High Lord remained calm. In a serene manner, Vandire told the gatekeeper that he would prove that he spoke with the authority of the Emperor himself if they would allow him to enter their convent with but a small bodyguard. The Daughters of the Emperor acceded to Vandire's request, and the High Lord and a small group of his retainers were led into the central courtyard. There, Vandire announced to the gathered sisters that he would prove that the Emperor's grace was upon him, and that should he lie, he would be slain. Vandire brandished his rosarius and ordered one of his bodyguards to shoot him. The man was dumbfounded and fearful of harming his master, but Vandire insisted. Forcing his trembling hand to stillness, the guard aimed his las pistol straight at Vandire's heart and fired. Vandire was consumed in a blinding white light, and when the vision of the gathered witnesses had cleared, they saw that he stood unharmed before them. All in the courtyard went down upon their knees, and the Daughters of the Emperor proclaimed their fealty to High Lord Vandire. In truth, Vandire had tricked the sisters, gambling that they would never have seen a rosarius. It was the energy field projected by the generator within the ornate medallion that had turned the guard's shot, and not the protection of the Emperor. Nonetheless, the Daughters of the Emperor promised themselves to serve their new master, and at his word changed the name of their order to the Brides of the Emperor. The sisters became Vandire's personal bodyguard, and their skill at arms was enhanced by training in the finest weapons and armor the High Lord could provide. The Brides of the Emperor would stand at Vandire's side wherever he went, and they were both his bodyguards and his executioners. Word of their dedication spread across the worlds of the Imperium, and none who entered the High Lord's presence would so much as look at him askance under the silent, watchful gaze of the Brides of the Emperor. Countless millions soon burned in the fires of Vandire's reign of blood. It was during this dark, forbidding time that a reformist sect known as the Confederation of Light emerged and denounced Vandire as a traitor. Led by the preacher Sebastian Thor, the Confederation of Light spread its message of a church dedicated not to politics and the secular rule of the Imperium, but to the compassion and mercy of the Emperor to a brutalized people only too ready to throw off the yoke of oppression. An orator of supreme skill, Sebastian Thor swayed whole worlds to his cause and turned the tide against Vandire. As Thor's crusade smashed aside those who remained loyal to the Ecclesiarch, the Space Marines and the Adeptus Mechanicus, both of whom had remained largely on the defensive during the Age of Apostasy, were finally able to join forces with Thor and close on Terra. As Vandire's madness had become all too apparent, the Fabricator General, Gastaf Hediatrix, of the Adeptus Mechanicus roused the Senatorum Imperialis to oust Vandire from power. Vandire's answer was to dissolve the Senatorium Imperialis and declare both the Mechanicus and the Adeptus Astartes heretics and traitors to the Imperium. This affront made the Space Marines reconsider their neutrality toward Vandire and the Reign of Blood in general, and at the height of the Age of Apostasy in 378. M36, an elite Space Marine strike force composed of forces drawn from the Imperial Fists, Black Templars, Firehawks, Soul Drinkers, and the forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus, assaulted the renegade High Lord Goga Vandire's seat of power, the massive ecclesiarchal palace on Terra. The Space Marines, believing Vandire to be only protected by legions of zealous but ineffective Frateris Templar troops, launched one of their trademark lightning drop pod assaults. However, once on the ground, the Astartes found to their dismay that they had grossly underestimated the opposition. Facing them were a corps of superbly trained warrior women, clad in power armor and wielding bolters, who fought with a passion remarkable even to their Astartes opponents and stood their ground to the last woman, fearless and fanatical in the belief that they were protecting the Emperor himself. The Space Marines' assault bogged down as they were pushed back with casualties, and the attackers were forced to resort to a long, grinding, and bloody siege of the ecclesiarchal palace complex, with quarter neither asked for nor given. For solar months, Vandire's army withstood every assault. The madness only ended when Centurion Longinus of the Adeptus Custodes, the Praetorian Guard of the Emperor himself, sought out Alicia Dominica and her most trusted companions, the leaders of Vandire's bodyguard. Longinus took them before the Golden Throne and the God Emperor, and though no written histories tell of what transpired there, it was evident that some great truth was passed to Dominica and her fellow warriors. When they emerged from the bowels of the Imperial Palace, they marched with barely controlled fury to Vandire's audience chamber. There, they found him in the midst of yet another insane tirade, pausing only to condemn him for his crimes against the Emperor. Reportedly, Vandire's final words were, "I don't have time to die. I'm too busy." Alicia Dominica drew her power sword and beheaded the High Lord. It is said that at the moment of truth, Vandire's Rosarius, which had protected him upon San Lior, now failed him, its gleaming form cleaved in two by Alicia's blow. The Reign of Blood was over.
It is not enough to serve the Emperor, or even to love him. You must give to him all that you had, all you have, and all you shall ever have. You must give yourself over utterly and entirely to his divine will, and become a vessel of that will. Only then is your sacrifice fitting.
In the wake of Vandire's downfall, Sebastian Thor was declared the 292nd Ecclesiarch, and the Imperium began the long process of rebuilding. Perhaps the most sweeping of changes Thor instigated affected the military forces over which the Ministorum held sway. What remained of the Frateris Templars was disbanded under the terms of the so-called Decree Passive, which forbade the Adeptus Ministorum from controlling any men under arms. Never again would the Ecclesiarchy threaten the continued rule of the Administratum. The brides, after resuming their original title of Daughters of the Emperor, were at a loss as to what their purpose should be after this event, and so the Ecclesiarchy took the opportunity to recruit and indoctrinate them into the ranks of the Ministorum's military forces. Due to their all-female membership, the Daughters of the Emperor did not technically break the ban, and thus the Ecclesiarchy was able to circumvent the Decree Passive strictures, even if the spirit of Thor's decree was rather blatantly disregarded. This newly formed military force was renamed the Orders Militant of the Adepta Sororitas. The sisterhood became true defenders of the faith and a very physical reminder of the power of the Ecclesiarchy. Trained to the highest levels possible for normal humans and possessed of a phenomenal faith in the God Emperor of mankind, the sisters would go on to engage in wars of faith, bringing the light of the Emperor to parts of the galaxy that had fallen into darkness. During the first years of the Sisterhood's existence, Alesia Dominica, who founded the Order's militant at Thor's behest, led wars of faith against the alien invaders that had exploited the Imperium's weakness during the Reign of Blood. Sylvana, Mina, Lucia, Catherine, and Arabella, those sisters who had joined her before the Golden Throne, accompanied Dominica. Under their combined leadership, the Sororitas were filled with a righteousness of purpose that the Imperium had not witnessed since the legendary days of the Great Crusade. Countless enemies fell as the armies of the Sororitas brought the divine judgment of the Ecclesiarchy to the farthest corners of the galaxy, and to this day the Sisters of Battle have stood as faithful and loyal defenders of the Ecclesiarchy and the Imperium. During Thor's Reformation, another organization came into being at the end of the Age of Apostasy, the Ordo Hereticus. Formed initially by the Inquisition to ensure that such a calamity as the Age of Apostasy could never again befall the Imperium, its remit soon expanded to cover not just doctrinal heresy against the Imperial Creed, but genetic and psychic divergence from baseline humanity among the Imperial population as well. Soon after the formation of the Order's militant, the Masters of the Ordo Hereticus and the highest-ranked sisters of the Adepta Sororitas signed the Convocation of Nephilim, a document that bound the sisterhood to the Ordo Hereticus as its chamber militant. The exact details of this agreement have never been revealed, but some believe it to be linked to the knowledge imparted to Alesia Dominica and her companions before the Golden Throne. That such knowledge could be so dire as to bind the two organizations so formally is testament to the weight of the task with which the Adepta Sororitas and the Ordo Hereticus are burdened. Others believe that the convocation was intended to curb the power of the Ecclesiarchy, exploiting the fact that the Sororitas are a loyal and zealous force that could be used to enforce the agendas of the newly formed Ordo. Thus, the Inquisition's willingness to turn a blind eye to the Ecclesiarchy's violation of the spirit of the decree passive. Whatever the truth, those who seek it without the blessing of the highest-ranking members of either organization will find only a slow and painful death in the deepest excruciation chambers of the Ordo Hereticus, or a fiery yet equally painful end at the hands of the Order's militant of the Adepta Sororitas. In the 41st millennium, the Adepta Sororitas is part of the Ecclesiarchy and is divided into two convents. The convent Prioris is located on Terra, and the convent Sanctorum is based on the shrine world of Ophelia Sevenin. The overall commander and spiritual leader of the entire sisterhood and all its myriad orders is the Abbess Sanctorum, the leader of the convent Prioris on Holy Terra. As the recognized leader of the Adepta Sororitas, the Abbess Sanctorum is sometimes elected to join the ranks of the High Lords of Terra, while at other times she is subservient to the commands of the reigning Ecclesiarch. The convents of the sisterhood are organized into several orders. Each order follows the same basic hierarchical structure. Order. An order is led by the most senior canoness, called the Canoness Superior, who commands and administrates the entire order. Each Canoness Superior is subservient only to the will of the Abbess Sanctorum. Preceptory. A preceptory contains a single convent with up to 1,000 sisters, so an Adepta Sororitas preceptory is equivalent in size to a Space Marine chapter and is led by a sister with the rank of Canoness Preceptor or Prioress. Commandery. A commandery normally comprises several smaller convents or detachments of orders militant sisters from a single convent with up to 200 sisters of battle, commanded by a canoness commander. A commandery is more or less equal in size to a Space Marine company. Mission. The smallest organizational unit of the sisters, a mission consists of a few Sororitas units and can be led by a canoness or the lesser rank of Palatine. Unlike the many chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, the sisterhood is united into a single organization with a centralized ruling body. The overall head of the Adepta Sororitas holds the rank of Abbess Sanctorum and is elected from and by the leaders of all the orders. Beneath the Abbess Sanctorum are two prioresses, one leading each convent, and below these, the canonesses superior of each individual order. There exists a hierarchy of sorts amongst these leaders, though to outsiders it is highly arcane and ritualistic and based on a system of precedence. Orders that were established by ecclesiarchal writ are ranked higher in the order of precedence than those that were formed by a group splitting off from a pre-existent order. This is especially visible in the 6 orders militant Majoris, each of which has spawned dozens of far smaller lesser orders militant, the canonesses superior of which rank lower in the order of precedence than those of their parent organization. The canonesses superior are aided in their duties by their order's palatines. These are highly experienced and capable officers from whose ranks the next canoness superior will be drawn. It is the palatines that often lead missions in the field, whether the order is an order militant fighting the enemies of mankind or an order hospitaller establishing a hospital at the front lines. Below the palatines are essentially the non-commissioned officers known as the Sisters Superior, who lead or supervise groups of their sisters in whatever tasks the order in question is focused upon. Members of the Adepta Sororitas can and do transfer from one order to another, depending on their own unique skills and experience. In particular, a sister of an order militant may eventually transfer to a non-militant order to carry on the Emperor's work, should age or injury render her less effective a warrior. Furthermore, it is not unheard of for a senior member of the sisterhood to transfer to another organization entirely. Several canonesses are known to have become inquisitors, one a cardinal palatine and one even a rogue trader.
Let the word of the Emperor be heard once more wherever men gather and look upwards unto the stars. Let them know that the Emperor looks back upon them from the golden throne, wherever in this benighted galaxy they might reside.
The majority of recruits into the Adepta Sororitas are drawn from the Schola Progenium, having been identified by the drill abbesses of those imperial orphanages as suitable candidates from an early age. A few may be transferred from outside organizations, in particular the ranks of the servants of the Inquisition, although this is relatively unusual and only undertaken following lengthy consideration. Having been identified as a candidate for membership, the individual is shipped to one of the 2 primary convents on Terra or Ophelia 7, where she will be subjected to a lengthy and arduous regime of testing as a novice intended to gauge her suitability to join the sisterhood and to identify which of the orders she would be most suited to. Regardless of which order she will eventually join, all novices undergo extensive instruction in the traditions of the Adepta Sororitas, and most receive at least a modicum of military instruction. Once a novice is judged worthy to join the sisterhood, swear her vows to the Emperor, and has completed her basic training, the candidates are gathered in the great hall of the convent before the canonesses and palatines of the orders to which they will be assigned. Such gatherings range from grand ceremonies involving several thousand new sisters and taking several solar days and nights to conclude, to smaller events where only a handful of candidates gather in the Great Hall. One by one, the name of each candidate and the order she will join is announced, and the newly elevated sister will be led off to begin her vocation. Once she is assigned to her order, the sister will begin a period of even more rigorous training and indoctrination, which, it is said, will never end until she sits in death at the right hand of the Emperor. The famed Orders Militant, or Sisters of Battle of the Adepta Sororitas, pursue the ways of war to spread the Emperor's light. The Orders Militant are often tasked by the Ecclesiarchy with defending its shrine and cardinal worlds, or retaking such planets from heretics, Xenos, or the blasphemous forces of chaos. There are literally dozens of different Orders Militant, with their convents scattered across the galaxy. The Sisters of Battle are also often attached to the Ordo Hereticus of the Imperial Inquisition, and indeed serve the witch hunters as their chamber militant. Battle Sisters are recruited solely from the female progena or graduates of the Schola Progenium facilities spread across the galaxy. They are the orphans of those Imperial servants who have given their lives in the service of the Imperium, either in the Astra Militarum or some other Imperial Adepta. While being raised within the Schola, they receive a strong Ecclesiarchy upbringing and education, coming to regard the Emperor as their spiritual father. Progena recruited into the sisterhood are indoctrinated even further with the strict orthodox doctrines of the Imperial Creed, becoming ever more fiercely devoted to the Emperor and the Imperial cause. Their duty as part of the sisterhood is to ensure and enforce the physical and spiritual purity of humanity and the departments of the Adeptus Terra. As they share much the same role within the Imperium as the Ordo Hereticus, Battle Sisters often form a major part of Ordo Hereticus military forces when a witch hunter does not wish to commandeer the forces of the Astra Militarum into his or her service to carry out a military objective. The Reign of Blood, late M35, early M36. Goga Vandir engineers the ascension of the degenerate Ecclesiarch Paulus III, then becomes 361st High Lord of the Administratum. Shortly after, Vandir topples Paulus and assumes the mantle of both High Lord of the Administratum and Ecclesiarch. Vandir's reign of blood begins. Almost 14 billion are slaughtered by the Divine Army during the Purge of Lastrati. The daughters of the Emperor from San Lior are co-opted into becoming Vandir's personal bodyguard and are renamed the Brides of the Emperor. The Reign of Blood culminates in the siege of the Ecclesiarchal Palace, at the height of which High Lord Vandir is executed by Alicia Dominka, the leader of the Brides of the Emperor. The Thorian Reformation, early M36. Sebastian Thor assumes the position of Ecclesiarch. The 4,000 or so surviving brides of the Emperor become the daughters of the Emperor once more. They are divided between the two newly established convents, the Convent Prioris on Terra and the Convent Sanctorum on Ophelia 7. Those sisters still residing at San Lior are transported to the new convents, and the foundations of the non-militant orders are laid. In 288, M36, the decree passive, prohibits the Ecclesiarchy maintaining standing armies of men under arms. The daughters of the Emperor are officially constituted as the Adepta Sororitas. The ranks of the Adepta Sororitas swell to over 10,000 battle sisters, leading Sebastian Thor to establish the system of orders. The martyrdom of Alicia Dominica, Cower 650 M36. Alicia Dominica falls at the Battle of Friedesweid's World, surviving hundreds of blows but falling to a single traitor's lasgun blast to her heart. She is declared a saint soon after. Ecclesiarch Equitus VII formalizes the position of Abbess of the Adepta Sororitas and appoints Sister Palmiro of the Order of the Holy Word to the position. Wars of Faith, early M38. During a century in which the power of the Ministorum reaches a peak not seen since the Reformation of Saint Sebastian, 1,000 wars of faith are launched across the length and breadth of the Imperium, and billions of heretics are put to the pyre. Founding of the Order of the Bloody Rose and the Order of the Sacred Rose, mid-M38. An additional 2 orders militant are formed by order of Ecclesiarch Deus VI. The Order of the Bloody Rose is founded at the Convent Sanctorum in honor of Saint Mina. The Order of the Sacred Rose, founded in memory of Saint Arabella, the last of the 6 sisters to enter the throne room, is formed at the Convent Prioris. The San Lior Massacre, 799 M41. A Red Corsairs strike force invades San Lior, the original homeworld of the Daughters of the Emperor. The Chaos Space Marines are unprepared for the fury of the Sororitas reprisal as they come under assault from 9 separate orders militant and are utterly annihilated by the combined counterattack. The Battle of Fire and Blood, 833. M41. During the Vinculus Crusade, Black Templar's Space Marine chapter joined forces with the Order of the Bloody Rose to purge the heretical warrior cults of the Pelaragon cluster. The War for Piety, 835 M41. The shrine world of piety rematerializes after being swallowed by a warp storm 2 centuries earlier. The planet is, however, almost unrecognizable, having transformed into a hideous demon world. Canoness Soraya of the Order of the Sacred Rose immediately leads a force of battle sisters to the planet to retrieve artifacts from the Reliquary of Hope, one of the few sites on the whole world to have withstood the corrupting touch of chaos. As the rest of her forces establish a formidable perimeter around the reliquary, Soraya leads several Celestian and Dominion squads into the labyrinthine corridors beneath it. For 3 days, Canoness Soraya and her sisters battle through monster-infested passageways. Bolters cut down scores of blood-hungry demon hounds, and flamers burn swaths of nurglings and bloated plague beasts. Only Soraya and 2 Celestians survive to rejoin the battle sisters on the surface, having recovered the left thigh bone of St. Dolan and 3 pages of the ominous lexicon of falsehoods from a stasis vault. The surviving battle sisters withdraw to orbit with their prizes, just as a fleet of Grey Knights vessels arrives and lays waste to the planet with cyclonic torpedoes. The defense of Dimamar, 858 M41, Dimamar, birthworld of Sebastian Thor, comes under attack from the Eldar of Craftworld Ulthwé, without any warning or apparent reason. Seraphim Superior Imelda of the Order of the Bloody Rose immediately retaliates, leading her squad of Seraphim in a daring attack to slay the enemy commander, Farseer Cowerith. The Seraphim's pistols blast a bloody path through a score of black-clad Eldar before the sisters are engulfed in a hurricane of psychic lighting. Though many of her companions fall, Imelda refuses to yield and defiantly advances through the Edrich storm, slaying the Eldar Farseer with a single bolt round to the head. The Blood-Tide Martyrs, 876 M41, chaos comes to the Basilica of St. Mariel on the world of Van Horn in the shape of the bloodthirster known as the Lord of the Blood-Tide. The first to oppose the demon's legions are the battle sisters of the Order of the Ebon Chalice, but soon after battle is joined, all contact is lost with the Adepta Sororitas. The demons are eventually vanquished with the arrival of the Fourth Brotherhood of Grey Knights. Upon their victory, contact with the Imperium is re-established, and it is discovered that every battle sister on the planet has been killed. The slain are officially elevated into the ranks of honored martyrs in the eyes of the sisterhood. The slaughter at Sanctuary, 101 897 M41. On a world in the Vidar sector located in the eastern fringe of the galaxy, the Order of Our Martyred Lady had founded a fortress convent designated Sanctuary 101. The isolated convent had the misfortune of being the Imperium's first recorded contact with the Necrons, where the battle sisters were massacred by Necron raiders. Video logs recorded a furious battle between the valiant sisterhood and the Necron warriors, but little of worth was displayed as there appears to have been an artificial disruption introduced into the recordings. Subsequent investigations into the site of battle revealed nothing more than the mutilated corpses of the Adepta Sororitas, eviscerated in a hideously surgical manner. No signs of the true nature of Sanctuary 101's undying attackers were ever found. The Battle of the Penitent, 938 M41. The Orders of the Valorous Heart and Ebon Chalice suffer great losses against war boss Black Axe's orcs and are pushed back to the walls of the Cathedral of St. Dufaux. The attackers are held back only due to the unyielding determination and sacrifice of hundreds of Sisters Repentia. However, their martyrdom buys time for the battle sisters to open the vast cathedral gates. The greenskins are slaughtered shortly thereafter as 24 penitent engines rampage across the battlefield, staining it with orc blood. The Prometheum War, 980 M41. The Order of the Ebon Chalice reinforces Space Marines of the Salamanders, chapter who are engaged in a brutal urban war against the dread Black Legion on the world of Hellatine. The enemy is put to the torch as dozens of immolators and Land Raider Redeemers burn a path through several war-torn cities. Despite the strength of their combined forces, the Imperium's advance is halted when Lord Gralistix, the Demon Prince leading the forces of Chaos, unleashes a legion of possessed Chaos Space Marines. As the frenzied Chaos Horde rips through the Imperium's ranks, Battle Sisters and Space Marines fight back to back, their bolters and flamers defiantly blazing away as every warrior endeavors to sell their life dearly. However, the Allied forces are saved when Saint Celestine appears, falling upon the Chaos Horde like an avenging angel. The living saint carves a bloody path through the baying horde towards Lord Galactic before plunging her fiery blade through his tainted heart. With the death of Galactic, the Chaos Horde is banished into the warp, but of Celestine there is no sign, for she has vanished as mysteriously as she appeared. The Martyrdom of Praxedes, 991 M41, Canoness Praxedes of the Order of Our Martyred Lady, reinforces the Imperial Guard on the cardinal world of Ocassus, soon after the start of the Second Tyrannic War. As the Tyranids of High Fleet Kraken assault the Ecclesiarchal Cathedral, the combined fire of Retributor squads and Exorcist tanks obliterates the first wave, but the second manages to breach the cathedral's fortress walls. As Tyranids pour through, Praxedes confronts a monstrous hive tyrant. During the fighting, the Canoness is dealt a mortal wound, but even as her blood pours onto the floor, Praxedes summons the strength to land one final blow, caving in the hive tyrant's skull with a thunderous strike from her power mace. With the tyrant's destruction, the Tyranid swarm looses all direction. The Battle Sisters waste no time in pressing the assault, determined to avenge the death of their beloved leader. Such is the fury of their counterattack that the remaining aliens are swept aside, buying the time needed to evacuate the Ecclesiarchy's priests from Ocassus. The Third War for Armageddon, 998 M41. The Orders of the Argent Shroud and Our Martyred Lady stand amongst the Imperium's defenders as Gazkul Thraka invades the world of Armageddon once more. In the initial Orc assault, the Battle Sisters' positions were attacked by large Orc submersibles which emerged from the boiling sea. Caught unawares by the audaciousness and sheer ferocity of the Greenskins' attack, many of the Battle Sisters were slain. The Battle Sisters were the front line of defense for Hive Tempestora, but their battle lines soon were overrun. This enabled the vile Greenskins to take control of the Hive City's Underhive within only a few hours. With each successive wave of Orc attacks, the Sisters were continuously pushed back, until finally they found themselves with their backs to the great armored doors of their Sanctorum. It was there that the Battle Sisters made their final heroic, but futile, stand against the encroaching Orc hordes. This day became one of the darkest within the Order's history, as their battle lines crumpled and they were scattered. Those few Sisters that survived the final assault attempted to form their lines again, but were cut down by the massive green tide of Orcs. After an hour of savage fighting, no humans were left alive as the vile Orcs took Hive Tempestora and the Sanctorum. After this defeat, the Order could barely field 3 whole companies. The loss of their Sanctorum and the many valiant Sisters who had fallen was acutely felt throughout the rest of the Order. Many novices began questioning their faith in the Emperor. Those Battle Sisters that remained recovered quickly, swearing mighty oaths of vengeance against the foul Greenskins and vowing to retake Hive Tempestora no matter the cost. But before they could do so, the surviving Sisters of the Order were spread across the rest of the planet to help solidify key Imperial positions. Their presence proved pivotal in preventing the Orcs from overrunning several areas of Armageddon. The primary individual weapon of the Order's militant of the Adepta Sororitas is the bolt gun. Weapon specialists like Dominions and Retributors tend to use flame and heat-based weapons such as flamers and multi-meltas, and other weapons with a purifying spiritual effect. Battle Sisters use a form of modified power armor in battle. However, since they lack the black carapace gene seed organ implant of the Space Marines, they cannot interface with the armor to the same degree as the Astartes, and thus are somewhat less mobile in combat. The Sisters of Battle also make use of very strong faith-based powers in battle, which may or may not be related to the psychic powers of the Warp. The Sisters believe these abilities are granted by the divine will of the Emperor himself, though they are more likely the psychic manifestations of the Sisters' incredible faith and devotion to him, as the Immaterium is shaped by belief. The most common wargear worn by all Sisters of Battle includes Sororitas Power Armor. Commissioned by Goga Vandir, it is the only part of his legacy that was not removed along with his head. Created initially by the forges on Mars for the Adepta Sororitas, this lighter power armor provides excellent protection and increased strength with little to no reduction in movement speed or agility. Similar to the light power armor often used by many Inquisitors, the Sororitas power armor has an extended operating life. Sisters of Battle do not have the advanced black carapace of the Adeptus Astartes, however, the Sisters are trained to use their power armor to its fullest. Hospitaller Carapace Armor, often serving in combat zones, Sisters. Hospitaller require more protection than other non-militant orders. The distinctive armor is a welcome sight to injured guardsmen and acolytes alike, an angel of mercy sent by the God Emperor himself. In addition to its protective qualities, the hooded habit is often coated in incense and unguents, and the rest of the armor is sealed and treated against toxins. Bolt Pistol, Godwin Diaz Pattern Bolter, designed specifically for the Adepta Sororitas and blessed by the canonesses of the orders, these venerated weapons are presented to an Adepta Sororitas upon becoming a battle sister. The sisterhood considers the venerated Godwin Diaz bolt weapons heirlooms, each one carefully maintained by highly specialized servitors and trusted servants. This pattern bolter has great significance to the Adepta Sororitas, not only as a powerful weapon against the enemies of mankind, but also as a symbol of the Emperor's judgment and of the sister's personal connection to her faith. Frag Grenades, Crack Grenades.